Philosophers talk to our times, echoes of Rome. Today I want to do those first existentialists, the great spiritual movement that was Stoicism. It's hard, I think, not to love the Stoics. They fulfill in me, I think, some of the role that other people would look to in Eastern philosophies. I mean, there's no coincidence in that. The Greeks never wrote these things down, but they did in the subcontinent. They certainly sent missionaries to the strange Western barbarians. They meant the Greeks. And there is a very strong influence between Buddhism and Stoicism that can just not be ignored. It would be a huge coincidence that one is created 200 years or so after the other, or it's just missionaries working. But what is Stoicism, and why do I think it matters so much? For me, looking at it from today, I would say that Stoicism is one of the most honest responses to one of the most difficult things that humans have to face. You see, as I am a human, it's terribly easy to understand the world is all about me. God created it in 7 days, and I am his image. Poppycock. But once you say it's poppycock, what then? What follows? But that humanity seems to immediately lose itself, because our reason tells us what is left. But an entire press of causes, of one thing followed by another, from the Big Bang to the last squelch. Time seems to be defined by movements of atoms or subatoms, in which we are just an epiphenomena. Our proud right to have a soul, the mere movement of atoms, like the Epicureans always said it was. That idea, then, that reason would give us, that we exist merely as one amongst the press of causes, is in many ways the challenge within which Western philosophy always lives. It's always answering that question. Comes back to it in time out of mind. How do I understand individuality? Can I understand any notion of the person I feel I am in the context of the world as I understand it to be? That is a greater world where I don't matter, where the stuff of my body is not under my control, where everything I am was forged by stars, in stars, 1 billion years ago. So how do you respond to that? There are lots of responses. Faced with that sort of fatalism, one very legitimate human response is, of course, predestination, which cuts in all sorts of very deranged ways, I shall put it that way. That is, once everything is already pre-caused, and pre-caused, say, by God, then you are not really, your actions by themselves do not lead to your redemption, to your survival, to your existence beyond earth. This is the Puritan en passe. They believed a God so powerful, but they also believed in sin and evil. And the way they resolved that was that God had created the sinner to demonstrate his mercy and his power. But whether they were saved or damned, they did not know. So faced with the press of causes and blending themselves into those causes as a thing to be saved or damned, they invented the doctrine of predestination, unsettled their souls. And so the way they responded, and here I am on Weber, miles away from the Stoics, but he's drawing on the same idea, and we'll come back to exactly what he's drawing on in a bit. Faced then with that idea, they used labour as a way to demonstrate God's favour. And so accidentally invented capitalism. Well, that's how Weber would have it. And certainly it gets the problem and the power of such a doctrine. Once you've dissolved any notion of your own humanity inside a nest of causes, whether they're caused by God or just some random event in the universe 13.8 billion years ago. You have a problem about who and what you are. Another very modern response that the Stoics would look at and go, what? Is the response of those who believe in things akin to prosperity doctrine. The idea that God demonstrates his favour by just good chance and good luck. That the press of causes in the end revolve exactly as how humans understand them around us. And so that in a world where the press of causes can feel more urgent, I mean problems of global warming, but also just a problem of living in a world that is far more interlinked and therefore more finite and yet part of an infinite creation, all of those questions of identity can lead to a radical reassertion of one's own individuality in a nonsense of narcissism. Is that starting to sound familiar? That the Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius, are forever fighting against. They understand it is a legitimate response to that feeling of utter powerlessness that the press of causes can create. So, they say, what is the alternative? The alternative is you actually have to understand your own finitude. A good Stoic philosopher makes 3 moves. First of all, they'll meditate upon their own death and advise you to do the same. Always understand, they would say, that you're limited. Your time is limited. You must therefore act, not just because you want to now, but how it will be across the course of a finite life. That insofar as you can, you've got to plan, because it's the one you've got. Actions then become important, because if you don't do them now, you may never do them. Secondly, a good Stoic philosopher, for all the word Stoicism means it, understands that what happens to them is not, and even the bad things that happen to them are part of creation. Stoicism then preaches acceptance of the negative. You don't, in the sense that you don't rage against it. You don't whine and call foul. You just let it stand and you let it be. Why? Because a good Stoic philosopher will tell you that's the only way you can stop it eating who you are. Things beyond our control, things that limit us, things that block us, things that inflict pain, have a real ability to punch beyond the pain themselves and become who and what we are and what we can become. It is only then in learning to accept blockages, but also pain, and insofar as you are and love your existence, understand them as part of your existence, that you can set your mind truly free. Finally, and most uniquely and most lovably for me, amongst the Stoicisms, their response to understanding oneself as a limited moment in an infinite set of causes is that is a reason to be virtuous. It is in cultivating your own goodness that you can create ripples beyond who and what you are. You can define, create, allow for different ways for eternity to exist. An eternity that echoes not just through the human world, but the non-human world. The very press of causes, where you are also a cause amongst many, is then not an argument for despair. It's not an argument for narcissism. It's not an argument to cut yourself off and live alone. No, it's an argument for virtue, for going out into the world and trying to do what and when you can, helping people, making them think differently, making them understand who and what they are. It is only in virtue that we truly understand how we are part of the press of causes. The soul, then, becomes less something I simply have, but rather a garden to care for. To accept negative thoughts within and let them go, let them go. To cultivate those things that I actually want. Those virtues I want to grow into, to become part of. Because in reaching that beatitude, you reach some sort of eternity, as good acts ripple across creation. In a way, for a Stoic, evil acts never do. Stoicism, then, might feel a little archaic, and yet I think it is in many ways the only way we can respond to a world where the press of causes once again feels assassinatingly strong. And as such is an idea whose time will yet come again.